everybody, my name is Kyle, this is 39, welcome back to another video. Today in this one is going to be my Yu-Gi-Oh! Banlist prediction for the February, but more likely March 2025 banlist. I'm doing this a little bit early because I actually want to get one out this time. I was going to do a banlist prediction for the last banlist after YCS Anaheim, but then they dropped it during YCS Anaheim. So I'm going to make sure I can actually do one this time by making sure I do it a little bit early, but I think doing it early is pretty much fine because I think we pretty much have a somewhat idea of what they're going to do with the banlist, just because there's nothing really game-changing that's going to be released within the next month. Like the Blue Eye structure deck is cool. I don't really think it's going to impact the banlist like making at all, though. Same thing with like Maze. I think the new Maze set comes out in March, but I also don't think that's going to be that much of a game changer unless they release something like 7 Tachyon in it, but even then it's not that much of a game changer. So yeah, so we pretty much have a somewhat idea of what the format is, and that's, you know, Malice and Rizael being the top decks. But even though they are the top decks, I don't think they're for sure going to hit those decks straight away, just because they're newer decks, and they don't really like to hit the newer decks straight away. So what I think this banlist is going to be is more likely like indirect hits to the top decks, but also hitting some engine decks that have been seeing a lot of play, more specifically the Fiendsmith stuff. But we'll talk about that in just 1 second. The first thing I want to start off with is when are they going to drop the banlist? Well, I think they're going to do another drop it during a YCS kind of banlist like they did with Anaheim, because I think a lot of people did enjoy that. So I think they're probably going to drop it after YCS Vegas, like at the end, after the finals and stuff like that. Kind of like what they did with Anaheim, they'll just do it at Vegas. So that's kind of my prediction on when they're going to drop it. But I want to start off with the guarantee things that are probably going to happen, that's 100% going to happen for a fact, and that is these semi-limited cards going to 3. Cyberjar, the Danger, Snake, and Jack, Eva, and Monkey Board. Let me actually put it here. Let me type. I have to type in these cards. It's the first time I'm actually using this. So Cyberjar, for sure, if it doesn't highlight, it goes to 3. The Danger, oh shit, I misspelled Danger. Sorry. Sorry. Again, this is a weird thing. So Snake and the Jack and the Snake, Monkey Board, sorry, there's Monkey Board, and what was the last one? It was Eva for sure. Yeah, Eva's for sure going to 3 as well. So these are probably going to be your guaranteed unlimits. Again, these are cards that moved from limited to semi-limited, and without a doubt will probably move from semi-limited to unlimited, because they're doing nothing at 2. There's no point to not put them to 3 at this point. Am I going to take any other wild guesses with the unlimits? Probably not. These are probably going to be the guaranteed things that will happen. One thing I will say that will probably go to semi-limited is the Zodiac Barrage. Where is Barrage? There he is. He'll probably move to 2. They put him to 1 in the last list. It's doing straight up nothing because Zodiac Trident is banned, so there's really no point. Or even like Broad Bull is banned as well, so there's really no point to play this engine. So they're probably going to move Barrage to 2, even though they could probably go to 3, no problem. They'll probably put it to 2 because they like doing that. For some reason. So probably getting the guaranteed things that will probably happen, but doesn't really impact anything for sure. Now let's get into actually talking about the ban list. So the first thing first is we need to talk about the Fiendsmith stuff, because I think this is for sure going to happen. They're going to hit this engine somehow, but how do they go about doing it? Now, if they want to straight up just kill the engine, make sure this engine is no longer playable, they just ban Requiem. Easy as that. Requiem is kind of everything for the deck. If they just ban Requiem, no one's going to be playing Fiendsmith. Maybe like pure versions, like playing a shit ton of Fiendsmiths and stuff like that. But if Requiem's gone, it's no longer an engine that the meta has to worry about. So that's one way you can take it, but that's if you want to straight up kill the deck. I don't think that's probably the way to take it. Another thing they can do, which I really like, is banning Lacrima instead, or even the Trap, I guess, could work if you really want to, but I think hitting the Lacrima is probably better. So the reason why this could be a hit is because Lacrima has kind of been the reason why Fiendsmith has been so powerful lately, because not only does it get you an extra light fiend into the graveyard when you summon it off the Requiem, you can dump in Graver, and that gets you an extra light fiend that you can work with, but it's also an interruption piece during your opponent's turn, because if you keep the Requiem in graveyard, you go Lacrima, target the Requiem, bring back special Lacrima during your opponent's turn, Lacrima effect to dump the Fiendsmith in Paradise. That makes it an interruption as well. So that's kind of been a lot of the key things about the Fiendsmith engine, because not only can it set up the Wave High King Caesar, but it can also set up the Lacrima Graveyard interruption as well. So banning Lacrima kind of solves that issue because you can't really use it for, like, it makes something like going into Desiree a little bit harder, just because you, again, this gets you an extra light fiend into the graveyard. Because a lot of time before Lacrima came out, you just had to summon Engraver, but you can't get that extra light fiend into the graveyard. But with Lacrima, it gets you the extra light fiend that you want to put into the graveyard. So it's pretty good for that reason. So that's another way they can take the hit towards Fiendsmith. But another way they can take it is just limit track and limit Engraver. That is another way they can take this. Now, I don't think this is probably the best idea, because even though these cards would get limited, it would still be an engine piece for a lot of decks, because all you really need is the one Engraver. You don't even necessarily need track. Just the one Engraver makes it where you can still play the engine with, like, Lacrima still being legal and stuff like that. So I think this is probably the worst way you can probably take the Fiendsmith stuff hits. So I like the Lacrima hit a lot, but Lacrima is more of a newer card, not as new as something like the Rizael and Malice decks, but it's a little bit newer compared to something like Engravers and stuff like that. So maybe I'm going to keep with this just because I do like the idea of banning Lacrima. Keeping the Fiendsmith engine is nice, but making it where you can't really interrupt in the graveyard during your opponent's turn. But setting up the DDD is still very insane. So maybe maybe the limit is going to be track and Engraver. I don't know. It's really hard to say how you hit this, but another way you can just take it is just banning the Requiem. That straight up just kills the entire engine. I don't know if they really want to do that because they haven't reprinted these cards just yet as well. So I think, it's really hard. I think this is a really hard one. You can, all three ways I talked about is a way you can take it for sure. I'm going to go with the Lacrima hit. I think that's what, personally, I think is the best. It keeps the Fiendsmith still as an engine, though, which a lot of people still might get pissed about. I don't know. I think I'm going to keep it like this. I know a lot of people, it might be a little controversial, but we're going to keep it like this. So now with Fiendsmith out of the way, let's talk about something like the Rizael and Malice hit. So again, like I said at the beginning of the video, I don't think they're going to directly hit them straight away. They're probably going to be hitting surrounding pieces. So we're going to start off with the Rizael deck, and the probably most obvious one they're going to hit is Abyss Dweller, going to just being banned, just because it happened in Master Duel and it happened in the OCG. It probably will happen in the TCG. It's just an extra deck guy that Rizael can make that floodgates your opponent, which is not a fun way to play. Even though Dweller, I didn't mean to click on Dweller. Even though Dweller isn't that good compared to like other matchups, Dweller is still a very good card. It's not as seeing as wide play as a lot of Rizael. Like Rizael still likes to just end on Detonator, preferably over Dweller, but it's an option they have, and this is an indirect hit to the deck, so I can see Dweller just for sure being banned for sure. Another hit I can see is Bonfire going to 1. The reason why I like to put Bonfire to 1 is because consistency hits do matter when it comes to this deck, because there's not really that much engine pieces in Rizael, so limiting the Bonfire does do a lot. That's if 7 Tachyon doesn't come out, though. If 7 Tachyon comes out, I don't really think this is the correct way to do it. But if 7 Tachyon doesn't come out in Maze, but I think it will for sure probably come out in Maze. But if it doesn't come out in Maze, I think the limit of Bonfire does do a lot, because it does limit one of their engine or like consistency pieces without hitting something like X or something like that. If you do want my opinion, if they do go after one of the Rizael cards, they should hit Rizael X. So if they do go after a card or a Rizael card, they'll probably like limit X or even like semi-limit X, something like that. Maybe like a light touch, since it's like their first ban list they're technically a part of, even though they were technically a part of Anaheim, because that was their second day though, so I really don't want to count that. So that's like one thing they can do. I don't really think they're going to go after these pieces though, but I can see the limitation of Bonfire for sure happening, just to hurt the consistency of the Rizael deck, and especially if they see something like Lacrima getting banned as well. It's just another level 4 they can't get access to as well. Makes the Fiendsmith stuff a little bit worse as well. So I kind of can see this happening for sure when it comes to Rizael. Now for Malice engine, I think for sure Nightmare Griffin is going to be banned in the next one. This is another just lingering floodgate, kind of in the same like idea of Dweller, where it's a lingering floodgate that your opponent has to play through, and it's not really that fun to play with, and Malice can pretty much easily get to this card. So banning Nightmare Griffin, I think, is probably the correct thing to do. It's just another thing that Malice can't do anymore. Malice is still going to be good without Griffin, but now it makes it a little bit more fair to play against a Malice end board because you don't have to worry about outing the Griffin, right? So I think this is probably a guaranteed thing to happen for sure. Another thing I think they should do is Shifter. So I think this can be its own talk. So technically this is a Malice card right now as well, because a lot of the Malice decks are playing the pure version, playing Shifter to make sure your opponent can't play, but you don't really care about Shifter because you can still play under Shifter because all your Malice cards don't care if they get banished. They make them extenders pretty much. So I think they should go after Shifter in this next list. I know it's kind of controversial because this is one of those cards that Konami has refused to hit, but I think this is probably too time to do it. Now the question is, are they going to ban Shifter or are they going to limit Shifter? I think they should ban it, in my opinion. I think this card should not exist. I think putting it to 1 just makes it a sacky 1-of, that if you draw, like, damn, that fucking sucks, he drew the 1-of, right, kind of thing. I think they should just ban Shifter outright, because I do just hate Shifter, and that's coming from a Malice player, by the way. I fucking hate Shifter. I don't think Shifter should exist. So I think this is a card that shouldn't exist as well. So that's another, like, kind of hit to Malice. Another thing I can see them hitting is the Bystials. So obviously Magna is already at 1, so they don't have to worry about hitting Magna. Now the thing I could see them doing is maybe putting Druis Worm to 1, because it takes out another extender that's technically an extender for Malice, because all the Bystials are extenders for Malice. So it takes out one of the better Bystials in Druis Worm, because Druis Worm has that on, or when it's sent to graveyard, can target a card on, or target a special summon monster on the field and send it to the graveyard, which is really, really good. But if you put it to 1, it's kind of in the same idea of Magna. It's not that likely for you to see that, and it makes it where your opponent doesn't have to worry about something like 3 Druis Worm in hand. I think they'll probably keep the bad Bystials like Sornier and Baldrake at 3, just because they're the bad ones. I can even see him putting like Lubellion to 1, because the Bystial engine has been seeing a lot of play as just an engine with like something like the Regain and stuff like that. So I can even see him putting like the Lubellion to 1, like putting the good Bystials, Druis Worm, Magna, and Lubellion to 1, but keeping the bad ones like Baldrake and Sornier at 3 is like kind of an idea I think they could be going for. I don't know how much the Lubellion will happen, so maybe you can take this out, but I'm going to put it in the limit just because I think we're probably going to go after engines in this list, so I think the Lubellion does do a lot with that. Another thing I want to talk about, I guess, is more with the Rizael deck, is Dimensional Barrier. I think this card should leave as well. I think this shouldn't exist in the game. It's just another floodgate. This one's a little bit worse because it's a trap card, but Barrier is still Barrier. It turns off the Fiends, or the Rizael portion of the deck, which is never fun, so I think they should take out Barrier as well. I've been kind of saying this for the past couple Banlist predictions, and they haven't done it, but I think they should do it because Barrier is just that much a problem. I think limiting it doesn't do anything because Triple Tactic Thrust exists as well, so I think they should just ban D-Barrier outright, in my opinion. Anything else do I want to talk about? Something like Cash, because I did say they're probably going to go after engines, because there's a lot of engines going around. So I can maybe see Unicorn going back to 1 in this next list as well. Now, I don't know how likely this is. A lot of people early on to the format wanted this card to get hit, but the more later we got into the format, the more it's like, it's all right. I think a lot of people were just overreacting, but I can see why people want the Castria Unicorn to go 1. It does turn the cash stuff into just any engine piece, which compared with like the Fiendsmith stuff. But if they go after the Fiendsmith stuff, I think the cash stuff is probably fine to stay around, as long as they do go after the Fiendsmith stuff somehow in some way. So maybe they do limit Unicorn, but I don't see it happening. I'm not gonna lie. It's one of those weird things, like, I can see it happening, but if it doesn't happen, I wouldn't be surprised either kind of way. But I can see why, like, hitting the engines is making sure, like, a Unicorn is kind of like, but I do like the engine of Castria. I think this is really, really cool. There's a lot of things that conflicts with it, like the Bystials, and Nibiru does conflict with it. I don't know. I think I like the cash engine being in existence, so I think this is fine. I don't think the cash engine will be hit whatsoever. Another thing I want to talk about is Triple Tactics Talent going to 1. I think this card should be limited. This card is very powerful. I might make a video specifically talking about this card. I don't even think the going second aspect of talents is the problem, like the take control stuff, or even the draw 2 aspect of talents. Maybe the draw 2 aspect might be a little bit broken, but when talents going second, I think is more of a fair card. But the reason why I think it should be limited is because talents going first is fucking broken. If you hand trap them at any time, they just go talents, look at your hand, rip another card, and they can still probably go combo, because a lot of this format is kind of like you need multiple hand traps to stop them kind of thing. And talents makes it where you can rip out the second hand trap and then just go full combo, which is why I honestly don't think talent should be at 3. I think this is a card that should be at 1, which is surprising to me because I actually do like talent a lot. This is actually one of my favorite cards in Yu-Gi-Oh, but I can also understand how powerful that look at hand effect is, and I think that shouldn't exist. So I think it should go to 1. I think 1 is probably fine because it makes it just like a 1 of something like with like Called by the Grave or something like that. So I like that kind of idea with it. And also, like, it's still searchable through Thrust, so going second, you still have that option, but going first, it's a lot harder to do, even though, like, Bystials and Nib exist. It's a lot harder to get to because, like, if they ask you, you can't, you know, go Talents to look at, or you can't go Thrust into Talents because they have no cards on field, so it makes it harder for that Talents going first effect to look at hand a lot worse. So I can see this for sure going to 1 just because of how powerful Triple Tactic Talents is. Another card I want to talk about is Artifact Lancia. So what are they going to do with Lancia? It's kind of in the same lingering thing with Shifter, which is kind of just a floodgate card with, like, if you draw it, you probably win the game. Like against the Malice matchup, you know, if you draw Lancia, you win the game kind of thing. It's kind of like that kind of floodgate. Honestly, I don't think they're going to do anything to Lancia just because it isn't out to Malice, which is kind of a problem because Malice is a really good deck, but game 2s and game 3s, they get a lot worse because if they do draw Lancia, you do just win the game because Lancia is just that powerful of a card. So I can see him hitting Lancia as well, but I don't think they really should. Like, this is like a hit that a lot of people have talked about, but I honestly don't think Konami is going to do it for a fact. Like, it's kind of like the Shifter route. Even though I think Shifter should be banned, it's like, is Konami actually going to do it? Now, this is actually a part of my ban list prediction because it does help out a Malice a lot, so he's kind of is a Malice hit. But I don't think they're really going to go after Lancia this list for sure. Like, I honestly don't think Konami's going to hit Lancia. Even though a lot of people are talking about hitting Lancia, I don't think they're going to hit Lancia I just don't think they're gonna hit Lancia. Same thing with Droll and Lockbird. Like, a lot of people are talking about Droll because it kind of is the same like idea as Shifter and Lancia, where it's a floodgate kind of hand trap. If this resolves, you kind of have to play through the entire turn without searching. But the one thing with Droll is, one, it's not as powerful as you think it is. Like, they, one, for sure are guaranteed a search before you can activate Droll, so it makes it a little bit fair because at least they do get a search. And 2, I just don't think they're going to ban Droll. Like, this is just another card that's been talked about. I've seen people talk about banning because it's a floodgate kind of hand trap. I don't think it's going to happen. Yeah, I just don't think this is going to happen. So, looking at the ban list, is there anything else that I would change? Like, the unlimits are pretty much a guarantee. I can see Barrage going to 2. There's probably going to be other, like, semi-limited cards, but I'm not going to predict them here because honestly, Konami does it randomly sometimes. They just, like, cards that have been there for years and probably shouldn't be on, like, the limit or ban list, they randomly just take off. But I'm not going to, because it's always random on what they do. So, there's that. The limits, like, Bonfire, Thrust, or Talent, sorry. The Bystials are maybe a little bit more controversial, but these are kind of, like, indirect hits to, the Malice deck, because Jerusalem is still pretty good. Even though they have Baldrake and Sornier, those are worse hand traps compared to what Jerusalem is. I can also see Lubellion just because of maybe they don't like the Lubellion engine kind of thing. This also would, like, line up with the OCG as well, because they have every Bystial at 1 in the OCG. This would kind of line it up, and we have the bad ones like Sornier and Baldrake still at 3, but the good ones at 1. I can see that kind of happening. And for the bans, like Lacrima, like, again, we talked about the Fiendsmith stuff. There's multiple ways you can take that. If you want to outright kill it, ban Requiem. I think Lacrima is a really good hit. It keeps Fiendsmith in the game, but makes it where it's not as powerful, so I kind of like this hit a lot. Dweller, I think this is just going to line up with the Master Duel and OCG ban list, so this is probably why they're going to do that. Also an indirect hit to Rizael as well. Nightmare Griffin is just an indirect hit to the Malice deck as well. Same thing with Shifter. I don't think Barrier should exist because it's just another floodgate against something like Rizael, which kind of sucks. Besides that, I think that's it, because again, this ban, like I said, is more going to be indirect hits than it is going to be direct hits. If they are going to hit something, that I can see X going to 2, like I did talk about, or even to 1, but that's pretty much it. I think everything else would probably be fine, especially since Malice and Rizael are getting new support in Alliance Insight as well. So even though it's maybe a little bit of an underwhelming list, I do kind of think this is kind of my prediction for the list. Is Shifter actually going to happen? We'll see. This is kind of the one thing I'm not confident about, this and D-Barrier, because this is something like I've always talked about, like they should hit these cards, but they never do. But I can pretty much I can pretty much agree with everything else. Maybe like Lebellion doesn't get hit, but I can see something like the Bystial Druisworm getting hit for sure. So that is my ban list prediction. I know this video is always controversial every time I upload it. Gets a lot of dislikes because, again, this is just a prediction video. It's not going to be a guaranteed thing, and a lot of people might, you know, point out things that I missed. So do comment down below if you agree, disagree. Again, this is kind of just a discussion video. This is not going to guarantee to happen. I do kind of want to read what your thoughts on the ban list are going to be. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, leave a like and subscribe for more content on the channel, and I hope to see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.